one of the things that we have to underline when we do start speaking up is we have to underline the impact, how big of a deal this is for us.
Ever feel like you're in a constant competition between your career and your husband's patience? Your kids think you work too hard, but hey, you're doing it all for them, right? The struggle is real, and I've been there too. Moments of feeling like a crappy mom and wife because once again, your kids had breakfast on their way to school. And you've got more important things on your plate than cooking and cleaning. Hey there, working moms who are juggling a million things and still wondering if you're doing it right. I'm Veronica Cisneros, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, a mama of 3, and married for 24 years. Welcome to the Empowered and Unapologetic podcast, where we dive deep into the messy, chaotic, and sometimes hilarious world of mastering motherhood, marriage, and business. I get it. Balancing it all was never the goal, but here we are, trying anyway. I'm here to share my journey and guide you through yours. No more apologies for being driven, and definitely no compromises on your dreams. Together, we'll navigate the challenges of being a powerhouse in both business and family life. Join me as we tackle the uncomfortable conversations from being the breadwinner to changing the rules of what a marriage looks like. Let's figure out how to parent in a working parent household without the constant arguments or guilt. I'm Veronica Cisneros, and this is Empowered and Unapologetic, where we embrace the chaos, challenge the norms, and strive to live life on our own terms. Get ready for some real talk, actionable tips, and a few laughs along the way. Hello, and welcome back to the Empowered and Unapologetic podcast. I'm your host, Veronica Cisneros. Today, we are thrilled to dive deep into the world of personal empowerment as finding one's voice with the incredibly dynamic Amy Greensmith. Amy is a certified and credentialed life coach and hypnotherapist known for her masterful public speaking and unique blend of irreverence, wisdom, and humor. She has dedicated her career to moving individuals towards radical personal empowerment and enhanced self-growth, utilizing her roles as a coach, writer, podcaster, and speaker. Amy's approach is highly sought after, and she has been featured in Inspired Coach magazine and on Fox 5 San Diego for her transformative work in helping people find their voice. Today, she's here to share her insights and tools to help you, our listeners, step into your power and embrace your true self. Amy, what's up?
Hi, Veronica. I'm so excited to connect. How are you?
I'm doing good. So are you in San Diego? Are you here?
No, I'm originally from Southern California, but I've lived in Charlotte, North Carolina for about the last 7 years.
Oh, damn. I was like, dude, we need to kick it.
Yeah, that's definitely my old stomping grounds. I grew up in Southern California, not actually in the San Diego area, but more in like the Orange County neighborhood.
Oh, okay. Right on.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Awesome. So could you start by sharing a bit about your journey to becoming a life coach and hypnotherapist, and what inspired you to focus on helping individuals find their voice?
Well, I think for many of us, and I know your story is very similar, that a lot of times the things that have been so tumultuous and difficult for us to navigate in our own life end up becoming the thing that we share and that we teach on, right? And so my situation is quite the same. So for a bit of context, I grew up in an incredibly conservative, born-again Christian family, a lot of faith traditions and religious dogma.
Mm-hmm.
My father had a master's in divinity and a doctorate in ministry. So I like to say he was not fucking around.
No, not at all. Amen.
And I think a lot of folks who are high-achieving women that are listening can relate to being that kid, the one who checked off all the boxes, who did everything right, the consummate good girl. And juxtaposed against my 2 younger siblings, I started working when I was 14, put myself through college, and they both had trouble with the law and
Yeah.
did jail time. And, it was quite a different scenario. And that will come into play a bit here in a second. So in '07, my father passed away. And at the time, I was starting to get involved in personal development, but I was also working as a makeup artist and a corporate trainer for a prestige makeup brand. And so I felt incredibly convicted that I was going to do his makeup for his viewing. So
Yeah.
this is dead dad makeup portion, everybody on the
Girl.
show. We're
Girl. I think our dads passed away around the same time. My dad passed away 17 years ago.
yes,
It's coming up on 17. Holy moly. Oh, damn.
it flies,
My
right?
dad was like, yeah, my dad had just turned 50.
Yeah, so young.
Yeah.
I know when I think about that now, my husband's about to be 53. Yeah, my father was 58 when he passed, so incredibly young.
Yeah.
But I felt because I had that skill set of makeup artistry that it would be kind of an asshole move to be like, "Oh, Dad, get your own makeup artist."
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
knew
Yeah.
without a shadow of a doubt that was something that I was going to do. And I also spoke to, the crowd of hundreds of people that were there for the service. So, needless to say, I felt like I was winning at daughter that day.
Yeah. Duh.
We get back home to my parents' house, and my mom finds it the most opportune time to say to me that it feels as though my father and her had failed as parents, grouping me in with my two siblings, saying, because the three of you are no longer subscribed to the faith that we raised you with, right? That we were not, quote, walking with the Lord.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, Veronica, that was the first moment that I actually felt like this is a precipice. This is a decision between making somebody else happy or making me happy.
Yeah.
And up until that time, I had been quite astute at shape shifting. So
Yeah.
when my partner and I went to visit my family, it was, okay, no liberal agenda, no cussing, no drinking, no,
Yeah.
and really kind of putting up this veneer.
Yeah.
And the only thing I could kind of muster to say to her in that moment was, you probably shouldn't say that to a child.
Yeah.
And she just said, well, that's just how I feel. And I really think that in a lot of speaking up situations, boundaries, tough conversations, it's not necessarily ultimatum. In fact, I think a majority of the time it's not. It's collaborative. However, if push comes to shove, and I have to decide between making someone else happy or making me happy, I'm going to choose me.
Yeah.
And that was the first kind of line in the sand that I drew.
Yep.
But I'll tell you what, right after that, it was like a dam had burst, and I became incredibly adversarial, incredibly combative. I wanted to talk about all the things that my mom and I were on completely different pages on. And I think I was also bolstered by the fact that my father was gone, and now it was like, you and me, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it wasn't until many, many times of having to walk back my delivery of saying something so cruel or acrimonious to her that I would go to her the next day and say, hey, listen, I still feel very strongly about what we discussed. My opinion hasn't changed. However, I should have never spoken to you in that way. And for that, I apologize. Because I think a lot of times when we're at odds with someone, we take everything back to smooth it over instead of really owning just the piece that we need to apologize for. I don't need to apologize for having a difference of opinion.
No.
But I do want to show up in a way that feels powerful. So that now has informed the work that I do in the world. So it's kind of twofold. It's this internal component of genuinely believing that you matter, that you are worthy, and then the external component of how do I then communicate with the outside world?
Yeah. And that exposes so many insecurities. It exposes so many insecurities. It exposes so much fear and uncertainty. And I just want to say that I admire the fact that you were able to walk through that path and come out the other side without thinking you needed to compromise yourself again, without, being shamed into compromising your identity to fit the role of what your mom or anybody else needed. And that's not easy. That is not easy.
No.
So I admire that.
Thank you. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because when I talk about this subject, a lot of times people will, oh gosh, that seems so easy for you, or you have an answer for everything or a script for everything. And I'm like, listen, that was many, many, many years of me putting the foot in my mouth and having to
Yep.
walk back my
Yep.
delivery. And it took me probably a good decade till I really felt like almost every conversation with her in particular, I could handle myself in a way that I was proud
Yeah.
instead of using a lot of my, that inner child becoming an outer child and having sort of the emotional regression.
Hmm.
So it is not for the faint of heart, but my God,
No,
it's
no,
worth it.
no. Hell to the. That's one of the main reasons why I said what I said, because it is not easy. It's kind of like this. It's like this tug of war battle. Like, you want to stay strong in your stance because you believe in it, and at the same time, there's so much pain. There's so much uncertainty. I can't even think of another word. There's so much
Yeah,
uncertainty attached to that other side that there are times where you're going to want to just say, you know what, fuck it. Like, it was easier for me to stay in the discomfort than me to stay in this level of discomfort, because this level of discomfort is a whole lot of embracing the pain that I've tried to ignore.
that's right. Well, I think you also brought up something really, really poignant here, Veronica, because a lot of times when you start speaking up for yourself or you establish a boundary,
Hmm.
you will
Hmm.
have what I refer to as dichotomous emotion, where on one hand, you are so proud of yourself that you finally spoke up.
Yep.
And that's also paired with sadness, disappointment, grief, frustration,
Bingo.
feeling dismissed. And so I think we don't talk about that breadth of emotional intelligence that's being called for
Hmm.
when we start having these boundary conversations, because we think, oh, I'm just going to be empowered and I'm going to be just like shit and
Yeah,
glitter.
no, that
And
shit
it's
doesn't
not,
happen.
it's not
No,
how
no,
it is.
no,
Yeah, you
no.
have to reckon with and tangle with some of those uncomfortable emotions.
Absolutely. In your experience, what are some common barriers that high achieving women face when it comes to expressing themselves and claiming their space?
Well, something that I think we have to really look at when we're talking about this is how we are socialized. And if you are a woman or you were socialized as a woman or you're femme presenting, you already have these cards kind of stacked against you that say, we grade men as being worth more than women, right? Quite
Mhm.
literally, we see that in the pay gap. So, and this happens with all marginalized identities. So already we're saying it's a man's world. We put the man's name first. We have monikers to delineate if you are single or if you're married. We don't do that for men, but we need to know if you're a Mrs. or a Miss, because historically our currency has been in our beauty and in our reproduction. How
Yeah.
much can you bring to the table in that regard? And that's a really, really old, dated paradigm. However, it's still very much present in our work worlds. So I think for a lot of women, I was just talking about this with a client of mine who is in a predominantly male field and she's in a high leadership position. And she sees all these folks around her who are doing the bare minimum. And she is just killing herself trying to check off all these boxes. So, one of the things that I feel very adamant about expressing to people is understanding that there is an actual systems failure. There's a system failure in capitalism, in
Hmm.
how we say you are only valuable for what you produce. There's a systems failure in a lot of organizations that penalize you for being excellent. So if you are fantastic at your job, you might get asked to do more and given more and more and more and more, and it's really exploitation when you look at it. So I think the reason why this is important to look at is because so many women go, well, what's wrong with me? Why can't I keep up? Why can't I check off the boxes? Or so and so can do it, why can't I? And we have to recognize that the system is not set up for you to have rest and play and
Yeah.
community and be successful at your job. You have to reckon with your own personal sense of priority. So I think for many people, it's difficult because we've been told, here's how you have to get ahead
Hmm.
in a man's world.
Yeah.
Here's what you have to sacrifice. And also, we don't really want to hear from you very much, right?
Yeah.
Shutting women down. And so the way in which we start taking up space is to recognize, where are the places that I tend to shut myself down? Is it in the boardroom? Is it with your friends and family? A lot of times it's with in-laws. It could be around other parents. But I think you have to recognize, and this is one of the best places to figure out, where am I people pleasing? Where am I putting other people ahead of myself? Is to take stock of, what are the things and who are the people that I chronically complain about? Because a lot of times, and as a therapist, Veronica, I'm sure you are aware of this, where people will bitch and moan and they will give you all the gory details, but it's their partner they need to talk to, or it's their co-part, or it's their supervisor.
Yeah.
And so they might be speaking up. They're just speaking up to the wrong person.
Yeah.
So I like to say, you need to at least give people the opportunity to be what you need. If they had no idea that this is how you felt, or what a big deal this is for you, that's a communication opportunity on your behalf. Because a lot of the times, if you are high achieving and you are excellent at what you do, the other side of that, people tend to look at you and think one of two things, or both. One, it's easy for her.
Yeah.
It's effortless for her. Or two, she wants to do it.
Yep.
She wants the control.
Yep.
So unless we are speaking up and saying, hey, listen, I hope I make this look really easy, but I've got to be really honest with you. I am at my limit with how much I can take on, and this is not tenable for me.
Yeah.
Here's some proposed solutions, right?
Absolutely.
Unless we're doing that, the natural inclination on the other side is to go, I'm sure if it was an issue, Veronica would tell me.
Yeah.
I'm sure if it was too much, Amy would say something. That makes logical sense. So we have to step outside and go, what am I chronically complaining about?
Yeah.
And have I given that person the opportunity to be what I need?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love how you bring up the other side, because oftentimes we're so stuck on resenting them and blaming them and holding in all of this frustration, when the reality still points that finger back to us. How are we a part of this unhealthy codependent pattern? Could you explain the role of hypnotherapy in personal empowerment? How does it help your clients achieve a greater sense of self-worth?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that most people can relate to is, if they've listened to a podcast or a personal development book or something like that, and you're told, start saying all these positive affirmations, like, I am enough, I am worthy, I'm capable of voicing my wants, needs, and opinions. And then there's this massive kickback that comes from the critical factor of the mind, commonly called our inner critic, that goes, no, you can't, bitch, what? And it starts yelling and screaming at you. And really what it's doing is it's acting as a little guard dog for all of the things that are housed in the subconscious faculty of the mind. So depending on who you talk to, the conscious part of the mind is roughly 5 to 10% of our mind's power. The subconscious faculty of the mind is roughly 90 to 95% of the mind's power. And the reason why, the way that we can kind of see that exemplified is, if you see a heart, you don't have to consciously tell yourself that symbolizes love. There's a lot of stuff that runs beneath the consciousness subconsciously, and that houses our beliefs, our core value system. It holds our fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, our primitive defense mechanisms, and it holds our habits. Our conscious part of our mind has logic, reason, willpower, but it is that inner critic is always looking for congruence between what you are computing consciously with your subconscious. So if you grew up, let's say, in a situation where you had a primary caregiver who was incredibly volatile, maybe even abusive, you might develop a positive association with people pleasing, because walking on eggshells, making sure they were placated, literally kept you safe. Right? So then you get into your adult world and you start realizing, gosh, I let people walk all over me. And you start trying to say to yourself, oh, I'm capable of speaking up for myself. But that little inner critic is going, no, 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 that's not safe.
Mm-mm.
Remember when you did that when you were little and you almost got smacked? No, no, no. It's safer to people please.
Mm-hmm.
So that inner critic is always checking in. Well, when you go into a hypnotic trance, which is quite simply just the slowing down of brainwave state. That's it. We all go through a natural hypnotic state as we awaken each day, as we go to sleep, a lot of times while we're reading, watching movies. If you've ever had that experience where you're driving somewhere and you get to your destination and you're like, holy shit, I don't remember the drive. You were in a hypnotic trance. Your subconscious knows where you're going, knows how to drive a car. It's already ingrained into your mind. That way your conscious mind can go through what you should have said in that meeting and how you should have changed that opinion or whatever. So it's just a slowing down of the brain waves. Well, when you slow down the brain waves to what we call a theta brainwave state, that little inner critic goes to sleep. That little guard dog takes a little nap. So the things that you are being told or the suggestions that we put in while you're in that state, you don't have that kickback going, this is dumb. No, I can't. That's not real. No, you don't have any of that. You're way more able to absorb that into the subconscious and create a new reality. So I use hypnosis in every single module that I teach in my signature programs. And because it is one of the easiest things to start changing those core belief systems that are ingrained in the subconscious.
I love it. It's kind of like, if I'm understanding it correctly, it kind of sounds like it's the space where you can be your most vulnerable, and at the same time, you're still able to grasp everything new coming to you without distorted thoughts, without your past trauma, past pains, creating a wall, a barrier against it. I love that. 100%. It's never been explained. I've talked to people who have done hypnosis, and this is the first time that it's ever been explained this way. I love it.
It's completely scientific. A lot of times people think of it as being kind of woo-woo, but it's absolutely not. Like if you are completely asleep, your brain waves will operate at a delta wave. And that is so that if we're running in our dream, our arms aren't flailing around and, we don't need all of those motor responses while we're sleeping. So the brain can actually go into a much slower wave state. And you can start to become very aware of it. Like if you ever have, I'm sure you've had these situations where you are so exhausted, you're about to fall asleep, and maybe you're talking to somebody or chatting with your kid and you're like, I am running on empty. You're in hypnosis because your body is trying to go to sleep and you're also still trying to stay awake. It's a slowing down of the brainwaves. That's it. And it allows that inner critic to go to sleep so that you can compute those suggestions and affirmations that you really want to believe in.
Love it.
I know looking for the right therapist can be challenging. However, feeling overwhelmed and disconnected is even harder. Life is filled with several twists and turns, some more severe than others. We do our best to handle them as they come and find ourselves at a loss, not knowing what to do or who to turn to. The clinicians here at Outside the Norm Counseling are here to help. We are here to assist you through this time of need. Together, we will identify your strengths and goals and teach you healthy coping skills. Together, we will develop a plan to help you live the life you want to live. Our team is compassionate, genuine, and we take a great deal of pride in providing an empathetic, non-judgmental approach to all of our clients. It's time! You've waited long enough, whether it be for you, your child, or if you're in need of a couple session. We are highly trained clinicians ready to guide you. Schedule an appointment now by calling 951-395-3288. Again, that number is 951-395-3288. We're looking forward to meeting you and being a part of your journey.
Many of our listeners juggle multiple roles: motherhood, marriage, their professional life. How can they effectively find and use their voice in each of these capacities?
Well, I think for most folks, there is an area where it hurts the most, right? And I know you've shared your story that, it was your marriage. I was really clear that my marriage was about to end. That's where it hurts the most.
Yep.
And that's usually indicative of so much other internal stuff that's going on. It's not just broken communication. It's usually that there's a lot of personal development that has to be at play on both parties' behalf, right? So if we're talking about learning to find our voice or learning how to speak up, again, I think it goes to the inventory. And one of the easiest ways to take an inventory of where am I not being vocal, where am I allowing myself to get walked on, is usually our emotions.
Yeah.
Our emotions are one of the greatest entry points, but they're so hyperbolic and dramatic by nature that we usually take them at face value without excavating behind them. So just like physical pain, like if I have a pain in my knee, it doesn't do any good for me to be mad at that situation or mad at my knee. If I take it as a message of like, hey, bitch, pay attention. There's something going on with your knee. You need to go see a doctor. You need to get some help. Emotional pain is exactly the same messenger. So if you are frustrated, if you are overwhelmed, if you are irritable, those are all messengers to tell you, hey, I need you to look beneath the surface. We are not operating at our most optimum capacity, because if we were, we would be ushering in much more expansive emotions.
Yeah.
Now, I don't believe in bad or good emotions. I believe in just messages that come from our emotions. And of course, we want to move towards things that feel good. But oftentimes, when we feel something emotionally painful, we try to fix it with a physical remedy.
Yeah, or a task.
So we will, right. Yeah. Right. And so we'll say this emotional feeling hurts so much. Let me try to rectify it with a physical feeling.
Yep.
So that's why we hustle for accomplishment, or we maybe drink a little too much wine when we're overwhelmed, or turning to sex, even exercise, even really noble ways of processing your emotion. If you're going to do that, great, but be really clear. I'm letting out this grief as I'm going for this run, or being very intentional about moving through those emotions. So to answer your question, I think looking at how am I feeling inside of my marriage? How am I feeling in my conversations with my children? What are the emotions that are coming up when I get home from work each day or as I go in? Because those are indicators that of either, hey, this is exactly where I need to be, or we might need to make some shifts to move beyond that.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that you're challenging us to really, really hone in on what exactly we're running away from and paying attention to how we do it, so that we allow ourselves to really, really, really sit in that discomfort and really process through that pain.
Yeah.
Humor and irreverence are a big part of your coaching style. How do these elements contribute to breaking down barriers and fostering a deeper connection with your clients?
Well, it's something I think you would agree with this as well. One of the things that I love so much about the freedom of coaching in particular as a modality is I am not bound by any sort of stoic restraints of what professionalism looks like, which to me are quite archaic.
Yeah.
I had somebody, I was on a podcast the other day that they were talking about, oh, well, we talk to professional women, so maybe not cussing. And I'm like, do you not know that statistically, women who cuss are also likely to have more cognitive capacity and are highly intelligent? Like, we have studies that show that. So I think that is also what people are looking for. I've had therapists and coaches who, as I engaged with them, I felt like they were sizing me up, that they were diagnosing me, they were jotting stuff down. And I remember very distinctly, I had one therapist where I said, we've got a lot of work to do. And she goes, you have a lot of work to do. And I recognized that she was trying to put the onus on me, but I felt very alone. And I subscribe to a lot of the work of Dr. Brene Brown, who I like to call Our Lady Brene of House Brown. And she talks about the power of vulnerability. And I think that is missing in some of the therapeutic arts. And it's one of the things that I think we can embody through vulnerability, through irreverence, through familiarity. In fact, I tend to attract a lot of people who have similar stories to me, who have surmounted religious trauma, who struggle with anxiety, who are late in life covert queers, as I like to call it. So you tend to attract the people that you need to learn those lessons from. And so I have found that the more authentic I am, the more I pull towards myself the perfect matches as far as clientele goes.
Yeah.
And we're able to create so much more movement when they feel held and they feel like they're in a safe space, which I know you do in your work as well.
Yeah, I agree. Had I not ever shown up as my true self, my dad was a gangster, you know, and that, I'm gonna tell you right now, that shit comes out in therapy. I have never been in a gang at all, but my dad was kind of like the head honcho. So fuck yeah, that shit comes out. And you're right. It should never be you have work to do. It's we're in this together. This is collaborative. 1000% collaborative. We're in it. I'm going to be experiencing, when you're sharing your pain, guess what's going to end up happening? I'm going to then probably grab from some of my trauma, some of my memories, and that feeling is now going to be shared. It has to be shared. Otherwise, I'm here, you're here, and that shit doesn't work. Although, yes, you're in here for a service, and, you know, we're acting as your therapist, but you're still the expert of your life.
That's right.
I love that you brought that up. Can you share?
And I also,
go ahead.
I was also going to mention, this is not unique just to like therapy or coaching.
No. This is across the board.
I feel like it's across you do the best with hairstylists that you can be honest with financial advisors that you can say, hey, listen, I'm really worried about this. And they say, oh yeah, I felt the same way too. Here's what was really helpful for me. So looking for those people who are genuine safe places to land across the board.
Yeah. Can you share a transformative moment or success story from your coaching that exemplifies the impact of finding one's voice on personal and professional relationships?
Ooh, yes. Yes, this is actually the same client in both a personal situation and a professional situation. And she has given me permission to share. She's always like, share. Tell everybody.
Share with everybody.
Yeah. So when she first came to work with me, her goal was to get her husband to love her. And I said, I don't do that. Yeah. So because he's not sitting here telling me he's interested.
Yeah.
So I cannot do that. There's nothing we can do to make him be different.
No.
But here's what we can do. I can help you get to a place where you are so madly in love with yourself.
Yes.
And you have such a rock solid, concrete basis of self-worth that all of your decisions, including if you should stay in this marriage or not, will be illuminated and be very, very clear. So flash forward as we work together, and there was a lot that she shared with me that was incredibly abusive, narcissistic. This is not one of those situations where I'm like, let's work on it. He was very clear that you are the problem. And unless you get your shit straight, there's no hope for us. He very calculatedly groomed her out of losing her children. It was a very nefarious situation. And so as we continue to work together, I oftentimes will tell people your bullshit tolerance starts to get a lot lower. And the things that you used to worry about, the things that you used to tolerate from other people, including abuse, gets incredibly thin, and you no longer can sustain that. And flash forward, now she is incredibly happily divorced. She has explored ethical non-monogamy. She has multiple partners that she is just, it is how she is wired. And it's incredible to watch her. She's changing stuff in her career. She's going on all these great adventures and genuinely loves the person that she is. She also recently had a situation at her workplace. And I think this is quite emblematic of the way that we communicate. So she's incredibly gregarious. She's loud. She's outspoken. And so you wouldn't by by how we normally term people pleasing, you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, that person's a people pleaser. But she found that when she spoke up, she would speak up as a joke or being passive aggressive. So it would sound something like, oh, sure, I'll take that on. Yeah, just give it to me. I'm always the one who can get stuff done. And the thing on the other side, again, the logic on the other side is, again, I'm sure if it was that big of a deal, she would tell me. I'm sure she wouldn't make a joke about it if she was really serious, right? And then off to handle whatever it is that her boss needed to handle. So in talking with her, I said, I think it is not the matter of that you haven't said anything. I think it's how you've expressed that you have too much on your plate, or that you are being given stuff that is not yours to carry. And there is some exploitation happening here. And so we created a way for her to go in, have this conversation with her boss, and she used vulnerability and said, hey, listen, I love working here, and I hope that I genuinely make it look easy. I need you to know that it is not. And she went through all of these different things, and she said, I need to own that I have never sat here and explained to you just how big of a deal breaker this is. And that's on me. And here are the things that I would like to propose. And ever since that conversation, which was just a few months ago, her boss has completely changed. And she has had to reinforce the boundary and say, hey, just a reminder, please don't send me these emails. And he's like, okay, yes, you're right. So there is some enforcement that's had to go into play. But those are two situations, both personal and professional, where learning how to speak up and say, hey, I'm not going to tolerate this any longer, radically transformed her life.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. I love that. Love that. What practical steps can our listeners take today to start developing a stronger sense of self and begin advocating for themselves more effectively?
So I think the first item of business, if I haven't drilled this home enough, is to sit and take an inventory of who pisses you off the most.
Ooh,
because that is usually the situation where you have an opportunity to be vocal. But until we really check in with that venting, and I'm not talking about you just had a rough day, you come home and you just got to let it out, blow off steam. I'm talking about a grievance that you have that is habitual, that you over and over and over again want to scream and yell about how shitty that other person is, but you have not given them the opportunity to be what you need. And I would also say one of the things that we have to underline when we do start speaking up is we have to underline the impact, how big of a deal this is for us. Many years ago, I had a friend who was going to therapy. She was, sadly, her partner really needed to go as well, but he would not go. And so she was very used to using her tools, and she would come home and she would say what she needed and she would express it. But she didn't express the depth of the importance to her, meaning something like, if we don't change this, I don't see myself in this marriage long term. Something where it's really clear that like this needs to be rectified, because there's so many men who end up with women filing for divorce and they're like surprised, which I could go on and on and on about that. But sometimes it's because it hasn't been expressed in a way of like, this is a motherfucking deal breaker. And of course, you don't have to say it in that language, but to say this has such bearing on how successful we can be in this relationship. I need you to hear how big of a deal this is for me. So underscoring that. And then I would also say, one of the things I advocate for all the time is to gear up and prepare and write down everything that you want to share. And I've done tons of podcasts on it. If you're interested, you can always scoot over to my site and I've got tons of resources over there. But a lot of times we just go in and have conversations in a way where we cannot be heard. We say things like, we just need to talk. And it's like, well, that's immediately going to elicit somebody else's defense mechanism. That is not going to have somebody, if I say to you, Veronica, we need to talk. You don't think, oh, I can't wait to be what you need.
No, I'm like, right? Oh, shit. Let's
what did
go,
I
girl.
do?
Let's go.
And you are going to bring your armor,
Yeah,
right?
1000%.
So
1000%.
if I start the conversation with vulnerability, and vulnerability does not mean splayed wide open and sharing all your deepest, darkest secrets.
No.
It means being just human about what's happening for you currently. So saying something like, hey, I really appreciate you having this conversation with me. I know this is awkward and not fun, and it just means a lot to me.
Yep.
That's a vulnerable statement.
Mm-hmm.
Asking for the time to talk instead of demanding it is a vulnerable statement. So
Yep.
if I say to you, hey, Veronica, there's some stuff I'd really love to run by you. I'd love to get your thoughts on. Do you have maybe, 30 minutes in the next week or so?
Yeah.
That already says to that person, I respect you.
Mm-hmm.
I give a shit about what's going on in your world. But so often we learn like, oh, I need to speak up for myself. So the minute your partner gets home or the minute your boss gets into the office, you're like, here's what we're going to talk about. And you just unleash.
Yep.
And what we all really want is just to be heard. So we have to set ourselves up to actually be heard. Yeah. So asking for the time to talk, leading with a vulnerability, those are some very small steps that you can take. And the only caveat that I will say is to not lead with vulnerability if you are in an abusive situation. If historically your vulnerability has been weaponized against you, that is probably not the tool to use.
Yeah.
I'm speaking by and large with relationships that are fairly healthy. We might have differences of opinion. We might be bumping up against some difficult stuff, but we both are collaborative and we want to continue with the relationship. We're not yelling and screaming. We're not name calling, that sort of a thing, because vulnerability is not called for if somebody is threatening to you. I think that's important to underline.
Absolutely. Last question. Looking ahead, what new projects or innovations are you excited about in the realm of personal empowerment and self-development?
I'm actually really interested in seeing where things can go with AI.
Girl, yes.
It's really curious. I was at a speaking convention about, I guess it was a little over a year ago now. And there was a gal who part of her presentation was a hologram. And so she would come out and she would speak. And then she had this AI version of herself that was, this hologram version, same height and everything. And I thought, how curious is that going to be hired for speaking engagements or things like that, where you just kind of teleport a version of yourself to a stage. So, and I think it's also interesting to look at, could I take a large body of my own work that has been I have tons of recorded client interactions, and of course I would need permission to use them. But if I fed those all into an AI, could I create an AI version of myself where somebody could sign up for a membership, let's say, and have a coaching interaction with a simulated AI version of myself? If, that could expand who's able to access therapy and coaching and hypnosis and all sorts of things. So I think there are definitely scary elements and we need regulation, but I am excited to see where that might go.
I love that. For those that want to work with you, where can they find you?
Sure. So my corner of the internet is over at amygreensmith.com. And I like to say that all of those names are spelled the basic bitch way. Nothing exciting to see here. I don't have a fun last name like you. So amygreensmith.com, you'll see a place where you can get a bunch of free sources. I've got some e-workbook for you, a back catalog of over 500 podcast episodes, free hypnosis tracks. So come over, grab some freebies. And then, like any self-respecting Gen Xer, I hang out the most on Instagram. You can find me under the handle, Hey Amy Green Smith. And I would love to hear what your takeaway was from this episode.
Yes. Amy, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your incredible insights. To our listeners, we hope this conversation inspires you to find your voice and of course, reclaim your power in every aspect of your life. Amy, thank you so much for being on.
Oh, I had a blast. Thank you, Veronica.
Raise your hand if you are ready to level up your marriage for 2023. Do you find that you're spending your time together with your husband checked out and in front of the TV? I know you're ready for tangible strategies that actually get you results. Reignite the spark in your marriage, have fun, and grow together. Well, I hope you have your hand raised at this minute because I have something special for you. I'm introducing my brand new 6-question marriage predictor quiz that's gonna give you personalized results to catapult you into the next stage of your marriage journey. That means you'll receive the results to where your marriage can get the best help. If you've got just 1 minute, head to veronicacisneros.org/quiz. Again, that's veronicacisneros.org/quiz, and you can take my brand new quiz, Marriage Predictor. Get your results delivered right to your email address. Again, that's veronicacisneros.org/quiz, veronicacisneros.org/quiz. What's up, ladies? Just want to let you guys know that your ratings and reviews for this podcast are greatly appreciated. If you love this podcast, please go to iTunes right now, write a review, rate the episode, and subscribe. Don't forget to share it with your friends.